Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Discover how Alephium is revolutionizing blockchain with its proof of less work consensus, innovative smart contract language, and impressive scalability. Remember, nothing stated here is financial advice. Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today, I'm here with my good friend, Maud. She is the COO of Alephium. Before we get too deep into the company, let's talk a little bit about your background. What brought you to Web3 and what was your come to crypto moment?
Yeah, so I came into Web3 in 2017, and that was through a professional setup. I left my first job into a tech startup, and through my network, I started working into a crypto exchange based here in Switzerland. And I joined in December 2017, which was, if you were already part of the industry at that time, I think the first time we really painfully experienced the scalability issue of the main chain, with the crypto kitty completely plaguing the Ethereum chain, but it was also the first time Bitcoin hit 20,000. So it was kind of a baptism by fire from the crypto space. And I worked there for 3 years. I did really, I was kind of the Swiss knife of the company. I did some operational work, HR work, legal, but also product management. So really a little bit of everything. And then after this, I transitioned into Alephium because I actually had worked with with the founder and a few other core contributors of Alephium in my first job experience. And I just started there. And at Alephium, I pretty much have kind of the same role, which is I'm a little bit the Swiss knife. I do whatever needs to be done so the builders can build and the ecosystem can grow.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Alephium. What is the mission? What is the overview of the company that you could provide?
Yeah. So Alephium is a layer 1 blockchain. And really the driver behind the creation of Alephium was to build a completely different infrastructure for smart contract and decentralized application than what the industry kind of was leaning toward. Because right now you really have prevalent technological choice into that space. The majority of the space is, when it comes to smart contract enabled blockchain, is account-based blockchain, EVM-compatible, and a lot of them are proof of stake when it comes to consensus mechanism, which is a valid choice, and this is completely fine. But I think for the industry to evolve, it is important that we have alternative with different trade-offs. And basically, this is what Alephium was built for, to build an infrastructure that had different compromise and that really made it easy for builders, projects, and users to navigate safely the crypto space.
Absolutely. And you mentioned many things were on proof of stake. Is there a different proof mechanism you guys use?
So for consensus, we use something that we call proof of less work. This is part of the big proof of work family. So, but it has the little twist to address the energy consumption of the network when it reaches a large scale.
So what is proof of less work as well? I think many people will be familiar with the Bitcoin's proof of work system, miners, all of that good stuff. What is proof of what does proof of work or less work mean in that respect?
So it means that so it's a new consensus algorithm. It's actually one of the easier to understand Alephium innovation, I would say. So it's basically Alephium operates as classic proof of work up until a certain hash rate. Once we reach this hash rate threshold, which is in our case set at 1 exahash, the cost of mining a new block continues to increase as it would do on classic proof of work. But instead of asking miner to pay that cost exclusively in computing power, we ask miner to pay in computing power, but partially by burning coin upfront. So you don't reduce the cost of mining a new block, so you don't actually reduce the security, but you kind of cap the network consumption at large scale. So that allows, for example, if Alephium had a hash rate that was much bigger than 1 exahash, which we are not there yet, proof of less work allows the network to consume 87% less energy than it would in classic proof of work. So it is a pretty significant reduction when you reach a really large scale for your network, but you don't reduce the security of the network. because the
Got it.
cost would increase.
So it seems like a criticism of other systems is that they require too much energy. That's one of the things Alephium has helped reduce. What about the scalability problem? Like, are there more transactions than would be allowed on other proof of work systems?
So for scalability, Alephium use sharding. If you have followed a little bit Ethereum scalability roadmap, maybe you know a little bit about sharding, but basically sharding just means partitioning. It's a very general term and it can be applied very different ways. On Alephium, we have multiple chain on the network. So this is similar to, again, what Ethereum wants to implement, but you have also other projects like Near, Cadena, you have Multiver X, they used to be Elrond as well. So you have this is let's say, it's a well-known scalability technique that is using database, for example. But where our scalability solution is a bit different is all of this chain I mentioned before, they are what you call account-based chain. So when they partition the network in blockchain, they basically split the accounts across different chain. And if you want to transact between accounts between two chain, you have to do cross chain transaction. So you go off chain, and this change a little bit the user experience depending on how they transact, and usually it takes more than two steps and also have a very different security mechanism than on-chain transaction. On Alephium, because we are part of the big UTXO family, when we partition the network in different chain, we actually partition the transaction. So no matter where and how you're transacting on Alephium, you're always transacting on-chain in a single step, and this is all secured by the consensus algorithm. So you really have an homogeneous experience on chain, but you benefit from the scalability of sharding. So Alephium can scale well over 10,000 TPS transaction per second, which is within the proof of work sphere is a very decent achievement. Even some proof of stake chain or don't scale that much, and it's especially a nice result, I would say, given that we have native smart contracts. Because often, in addition to the classic blockchain trilemma, usually programmability becomes a fourth variable that gets impacted by some technological choices.
And for people that are unfamiliar with the blockchain trilemma, how would you quickly define that?
So right now, the blockchain trilemma, as it's known, it's scalability, decentralization, and security. And it basically means that you can't achieve all three of them perfectly. You have to choose trade-off. And basically, what everyone is trying to achieve is to get the highest security, the highest decentralization, the highest scalability for all those three components. And but you always have to do a little bit of trade-offs. That's always what happens in technology. And to this, I like to add programmability because I think this is a fourth dimension that is quite relevant in the space, because today a lot of people are really looking for smart contract functionality into a blockchain.
And what language do you guys write your smart contracts in?
So we really have, that's the third innovation of Alephium. This is really the development environment. So we have our own smart contract language, our own virtual machine, and we also have our own accounting model, which is a mix between the account model and the UTXO model. We keep the ease of programming from the account model, but we combine it with the security of the UTXO model for asset management. And everything within the development environment is really designed to make it easy for developers to focus on building and innovation and build secure smart contract easily. We completely eliminate a number of the most frequent attack vector. A very speaking one would be reentrancy. If you look up a little bit what a reentrancy attack is, and kind of the recent one in the space, you'll see that this is something that gets exploited pretty much every week, and over the past year or so has already costed over $1 billion in asset. So this is not possible on Alephium, for example. We also have a much more intuitive way to interact with smart contracts. Tokens are first-class citizen, meaning they actually exist as asset on chain. So even if the smart contract that issued them would have a problem, this does not impact the asset themselves that are on your wallet. So we have a really number of things. So we reduce the the amount of line also that are needed to code. So because things are really designed to be straightforward, so you can implement the same contract as you can, for example, in EVM with 80% less line of code. You also have, we've had cases of developers that implemented also from other ecosystem that they had years of experience with, where building an application there took them two full months, even though they had years of experience there. And in your hackathon, they could implement the same app within 2 weeks, even though they never touched the Alephium virtual machine, smart contract, and environment before. So really the focus is on making it easy for developers to write secure smart contract and provide a better user experience for themselves, but also ultimately for the end users. Because we need to reach a point where the space is easy to navigate, both for experienced users, which is not the case today. Today, it's still difficult as an experienced developer or an experienced user to navigate the space safely. So Alephium wants to solve that, but also make it accessible to a broader audience of developers and users as well.
Perfect. And would you say Alphium, there's a specific vertical you guys focus on, or is it relatively general who you all work with?
I think it's relatively general. I would say that probably the first very obvious use cases is DeFi. This is where you have today still the most adoption in the space, and it's also where the security issues are maybe the most painful in some cases. But Alephium can support any use case, of course, tokenization of assets, real world. We also have a lot of cool features when it comes to NFT and for NFT marketplace. I would say maybe the only use cases that Alephium is not optimized for, doesn't mean it's not doable, it's just not optimized for this, is, for example, we want the chain to remain pretty fast, right? So you can't store that much data on chain. Like it's not meant for, it's not meant for data storage. It's not optimized for that use cases. So for example, if you wanted to have IoT applications that would be monitoring on chain hundreds of thousands of IoT device and would want to kind of regularly update those data on chain, this use cases maybe is not fully optimized as it is. That would be maybe the, doesn't mean you can't do it, you'll have to design it a bit differently, basically.
So one of our goals with the podcast is to bring more, builders, more founders into the space. What would you say are some of the major challenges you guys faced when building an L1, and how did you overcome them?
I would say as a L1, there's different things. So as a L1, generally speaking, I think, for example, one, it takes time to build properly. So there's a time aspect that is not compressible if you want to do a good job, right? And I think in a space where everything goes fast, maybe, building a crucial piece of infrastructure like this can, takes time. I would say very pragmatically, one of the biggest challenges to get listed on exchange as a layer one, generally speaking, because for exchanges to support you natively, they have to support your infrastructure. So they have to actually do a technical integration, which makes them a little bit more reluctant of making the effort of integrating you versus a token project where they just have to copy paste a smart contract address. So that's general for L1. And then for us, in addition to that, as we are non-EVM compatible, because again, that's kind of one of our main value proposition, to offer an environment that is more developer friendly, honestly. It also means that when we want to bring services into our chain, it's a little bit harder because a lot of services would rather work with EVM compatible chain because they can easily adapt their copy paste and adapt their code to the various EVM compatible chain. Whereas for us, they would have to re-implement their services. Even though it's faster, it's easier than if they still have to build it from scratch again on our infrastructure. So that would be kind of some of the challenges that we experience. But we have the first Oracle launching on Alephium, and so we're starting to bring those services into life. It just sometimes is a slightly longer marathon than for other layer ones.
So it would seem like maybe attracting marketing to developers to other projects and bringing users over because of the compatibility issue.
So actually, developer itself is not really problematic. It's more to attract services for the ecosystems such as Oracle. Honestly, we've been with the hackathon. We really never had, like, for example, an issue of developers not being able to pick up the language. We had, again, developers coming from other ecosystem, some account-based chain, some UTXO-based chain, and nobody really had a problem pick it up. We had experienced developers, young developers that had never had a blockchain experience, and funnily enough, that's not really the biggest challenge, I would say. It's really more the services around it. Like, again, Oracle are a big example. Could be DeFi aggregator, could be liquidity aggregator as well. So kind of more of those kind of services that are maybe harder to
Infrastructure.
bring on board in the early stage, because you need to have a lot more adoption to convince them to make the effort, I would say, than if you were an EVM-compatible chain.
That makes complete sense. So let's talk a bit about some of the community involvement you guys have had. Like, has there been any feedback from the community that you guys have integrated into Alephium?
Yeah. So everything we build for builders. So we actually started small with the virtual machine and smart contract language, and it iterated based on user feedback. We've actually, even beyond the development environment, we had our latest network upgrade in June, and one of the biggest feature of our network upgrade was block time reduction. So our block time used to be 64 seconds, and we reduced it to 16. So from a user perspective, it feels like your transaction is a lot faster because you have more blocks. So your transaction is more likely to be included faster into a block. And it's a 4-time reduction, so it's quite significant. And that was prioritized based on community feedback. So this is really crucial for us because we build for our community. And at the end of the day, Alephium is for the people who use it. And we really want actually to walk toward a path where people who use it end up being the one developing it, like in a true open source fashion. Obviously, in the beginning, you kind of have to kickstart the movement, but this is really where we want to go, to have built something that is truly useful to people so they actually continue to contribute to it because they find a purpose for it.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about some of maybe the upcoming milestones or developments you guys have that the community can look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, we actually had a lot of milestones that have happened recently on the mining side with specialized hardware, so ASICs being developed especially for Alephium, which is a great show of faith from the mining industry into our ecosystem. We also have the second largest TVL, which is a metric to measure the adoption of the good or bad. It remains a metric to measure the adoption of the dApps that are built into the ecosystem, and we have the second largest one of all proof of work chain, just after, way after Bitcoin, but still just after Bitcoin. And now the big network upgrade was also a big milestone. We had our first developer meetup that was really fantastic, and we're still talking about sharing the presentation of the people that were there. And now looking forward, I think I was talking about Oracle. So I think Oracle coming on Alephium, they are currently deployed on testnet and will soon be launched on mainnet. So this will give a foundation for more application and new types of decentralized application being built on Alephium, over collateralized stablecoin, over collateralized algorithmic lending protocol. So really give a new, an entire new playing field for the ecosystem. We have hardware wallet integration, fiat gateway to make entering the ecosystem a lot faster. We also have additional bridges. We have a bridge right now to Ethereum that allowed us to bring, for example, existing stablecoin to our ecosystem, and also bring Alephium assets, vice versa. And we will have support more chain into our bridge to improve interoperability and open and connect to other ecosystem like Solana, Binance Smart Chain, for example, I think are the most likely next chain. And then obviously we'll start also working on a future network upgrade, which could include further block time reduction and a lot of other optimization for the ecosystem.
Awesome. Well, it seems like there's a lot of exciting milestones and developments coming up. Finally, where can listeners learn more about your project, get involved?
So I would say if you are kind of a builder, probably Discord would be the best place to kind of interact with the community. Or developers are also extremely active there. So as a builder, I would highly encourage to join the Discord community. As a user, probably Telegram or Discord would be similar. And if you want to have kind of a more distant involvement to the community, we are very active on Twitter, and that does, this way you can have a little bit more further away vision, but you also get a lot of that.
Absolutely. And I'll put all the links in the description. Maud, thank you so much for coming on the Building Web3 podcast, and everyone go get involved with Alephium.